This is part two. This is Dr. Vicki continuing with the Conrad Murray trial. And we're doing part two on CPR, October 11, 2011. Well, first of all, Conrad Murray talked about needing a CPR machine or a crash cart. He made this clear in his contract meetings with AEG. You do not give medications to anyone, no matter what they cry for, demand, beg for, whatever, without the proper equipment. Michael Jackson, no matter what he said, should have been told specifically, we don't have the safety equipment to do this medication. It's improper, and we are therefore not doing it. Bottom line, nothing else. I don't care if you're a star, I don't care how much money you make, Michael Jackson. We are not putting your life at risk simply because you want this medicine. We need the proper equipment and monitoring equipment, which we do not have. That is what Dr. Murray, Conrad Murray, should have said, period. And he was being paid enough money that Conrad Murray could have gone out and bought the equipment and had proper equipment. He was so cheap that he did not buy any of the proper equipment and bought the cheapest finger pulse oximeter, put on the finger, the cheapest one there was. I mean, why the cheapest thing for his patient? I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. Also, you never leave the patient. The word is never. Not that you have to go pee, then pee in your pants. I don't care. You never leave the patient when you're doing an injection of this sort at this risk. You just don't do it. You don't leave the patient. And you have to be in a state of mind to perform properly. You never leave the patient. If you're going to do CPR, you do it correctly. There was no CPR. This idea of CPR on a bed or CPR with his arms around or in the back of Michael, that's not written anywhere. That's not, no one's educated to do that. It's not approved. That's not acceptable. And when you call for help, you go 911, call 911. You don't say, help, get me help. I mean, the cook downstairs, what the hell did she know? She would have to have direct instructions, call 911, and it should have been screaming at the top of your lungs from the room. You don't go down the stairs. And what about the phone calls? The phone calls go to link to the psychopathology of this man. Like, he can't call 911, but he can do sex talk on the phone. I mean, and he has to leave the room to do sex talk while he's putting Michael to sleep. I mean, some sort of psychological guilt about what his real persona is. That he didn't want Michael to know, that he's making these types of seductive, whatever calls. But they weren't part of his job. And they don't take priority over the medical care. You never, the word is never, leave the patient alone for this kind of medication. Number one, you only give them medication with the proper equipment, and then you have to act properly when you do CPR. There was no CPR. This description was not CPR that we heard on the tape. This was like ridiculous, and then to leave the patient and go down the stairs and carry on. It brings one to really, as a physician and as a bioethics expert and studying psychodynamics of people, I suspect Conrad Murray, when he came in, Michael was dead. And all of this was some sort of theater and chaos, but it was not CPR. It definitely was not proper CPR in any sense of the word. Conrad Murray had an obligation to have all those medications locked up. There's children in that house. There was no action on his part to properly take care of the medications there in the room. They should have all been in a locked cart. And Conrad Murray could afford the crash cart and the more expensive materials that are needed. And that would have been, he could have even submitted those bills to AEG and be reimbursed. For 30 days, he testified that he put Michael Jackson at risk, that he was giving these medications without the proper equipment. And that is what we heard. 30 days that there was no proper equipment and that he was risking Michael's life. The children's life was risked because the medications were everywhere and could be easily gotten to, and they, under law, they should have been locked up and very well cared for, and they weren't. They were just laying around in cabinets, in bags, in Costco bags here and there and everywhere. CPR requires a state of mind, which we don't hear about. If you're doing CPR and trying to save someone's life, you're not calling 20 people to make the call to 911. You're making the call to 911, and if you can't make the call, you're screaming at the top of your lungs to call 911. There's no way the cook understood that she was supposed to call 911, get help. I mean, he didn't say what's going on. He didn't say, Michael Jackson, stop breathing upstairs. He didn't say anything. What he needed to say was call 911, call 911, and he needed to scream this at the top of his lungs from the room. There is a psychodynamic and a psychology of this man that I believe is very narcissistic, and what happened was death of Michael Jackson from negligence, gross negligence and gross malpractice, and then chaos that ensued after. Then self-grandiose, I'm comforting, I'm sweet, I'm caring, I'm loving, with the soft voice. Taking no responsibility and asking for an autopsy. I mean, that would make things go away. I mean, it doesn't make anything go away. Michael Jackson's dead, and that's the bottom line. And the medical care was not appropriate. And step by step, I have showed this in doing a bioethical look at the case, not just the legal look. We have to look at this bioethically. You should all learn CPR. You can go get it at the American Red Cross, look it up in the phone book, and go to your local school and ask them to start a CPR course in the school. You need to know what CPR really is. And you need to know that just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you know how to do CPR, doesn't mean you've been updated on CPR, doesn't mean you've practiced and know how to jump in there. Too much is clouded in this history. I do not believe CPR was done. I believe that some chaotic activity went on when Michael Jackson was found dead. Found dead, why? Because he had to make phone calls to women. And he did not want this part of his persona known by Mr. Jackson. This is Vicki Hafnagel ending this section of the Ethical Time. Conrad Murray, CPR.